So the common story says the light went out in his life.
Okay.
He poured himself into his work, that was gone. And what you will hear people say, and it's still repeated, is
Uh-huh.
that he went back into Copshaholm, went up
Okay.
to his third floor bedroom, and then didn't come out. Just
A
stayed
hermit.
there for decades,
Yeah.
mostly like a hermit.
Uh-huh. You heard that there. That is author and local historian Aaron Hellman talking about the notion that heir to the Oliver Empire, J.D. Oliver Jr., simply lived his days out upstairs in the Copshaholm mansion, living basically as a hermit. More of that later, but first, thank you for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. My name is Matt Emery, and I'm a local history nerd. My main mission in this podcast, as well as other Round the Bend material, is to create engaging content that shares how intertwined the South Bend and Mishawaka area's past is to our present. In the podcast, I interview local leaders, business owners, and community members to help tell their stories, because their stories help tell the story of South Bend and Mishawaka. For generations, South Bend has remembered J.D. Oliver as a tragic figure, a wealthy heir whose life was defined by heartbreak and loneliness. But the discovery of a forgotten briefcase filled with letters, photographs, and personal keepsakes has completely changed that story. I'm joined by local historian and author Aaron Hellman as he shares the remarkable discovery that sheds a light on this misunderstood story. Be sure to read his full story about the briefcase in the South Bend News-Times. A link to the article is in the show notes. A huge thank you to Aaron for joining me. Be sure to explore more of his outstanding local history work at aaronhellman.com. A link to his website is in the show notes. Also, be sure to follow him on all of his social media channels. It's Aaron Hellman on Facebook and Aaron Hellman Writes on Instagram and TikTok. A special thanks to our sponsors, MT Box Computers and Danbury Insurance, for making this episode possible. Before we dive into the episode, here is a brief word from Danbury Insurance. I've been working with Danbury Insurance for over 25 years, and I can tell you from personal experience that they're the real deal. In a world where customer service can feel like a lost art, they've always taken care of me the right way, every single time. They're a locally owned agency with deep roots in our community, and that matters. When you call them, you're not getting a call center somewhere. You're talking to people who live here, who care about this area, and who genuinely want to help you and protect what matters most. Whether it's home, auto, business, or life insurance, they take the time to walk you through your options and make sure you're covered the right way, not just the easy way. If you're looking for an insurance agency you can trust, I highly recommend giving Danbury Insurance a call, or check them out online at danburyinsurance.com and tell them that Round the Bend sent you. Again, a big thanks to Danbury Insurance for supporting the show and for taking care of folks in our community the way they always have. And now, back to the episode. Well, hey, Aaron, thank you for joining us once again.
Great to be back.
Absolutely. You're a recurring guest.
That's a compliment.
Most definitely. Before we get started, why don't you provide our listeners with some of the most current updates with what you've been working on, where folks can find all your amazing content and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I've got a lot going on, but you can find all of it at aaronhellman.com.
Okay.
That's where you'll find links to the books, to
All
the
right.
podcast, A Bend in Time.
Nice.
To the articles that I write.
Uh-huh.
And if anyone wants to come see me out in the world, there's an appearances tab, so you can see all the places where I'm talking local history at libraries, museums, wherever.
That's awesome. My wife and I went to see you at Studebaker Museum last week talking about South Bend Bait, and it was fabulous. I mean,
thank you.
You had all the folks in the audience just smitten, just staring.
It's a great story. I just have to get out of the way of the story.
Yeah, it was awesome, though, definitely. Over the past few months, what have been some of the most popular topics with some of your followers or some of your listeners?
So on more serious note, I have a new podcast episodes about the birth of South Bend. So 1820 to 1835-ish.
Yeah.
And that's a period where we know some of these guys' names because they're on street signs or on schools, but that's all we really know about them. And so to kind of understand why did they come here? This wasn't an accident. Why did they come here? What did their lives look like in those early years? What did a fur trader actually do?
Mm-hmm.
That's been a lot of fun to dig into, and people are really enjoying it. And on a fun note, I posted a video about how Toto,
Yes.
the dog from A Wizard of Oz, is named after this small town about an hour and 20 minutes southwest of South Bend,
Uh-huh.
and people have gone nuts for this video. It's no one has ever seen anything that I've ever created more than they've seen this now.
I love it.
So they're enjoying it. I'm happy.
That's great, that's great. And I listened to the first 2 episodes out in the new season, is
Yep.
that correct? I listened to them over the weekend when I was mowing the yard, and for anybody who there's no pictures, there's no videos of that era at all, and just to listen to you describe how South Bend and everything came to be is it helped paint a very clear picture in my head. It really did.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yep, I don't know. I think too often we just think that we're in this world automatically with roads and with cars and all that stuff, and as you described, the St. Joe River waterways, those were the roads.
Yeah, I mean, no one came here by accident.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like they were tired of traveling, and so they stopped traveling when they got here and were like,
Yep.
"Ooh, let's do a town here." Like, there's thousands and thousands of years of geography and Native
Mhm.
American history that goes into making South Bend the place that they wanted to come to in the first place.
Yep.
There was a whole history built before they ever
Mhm.
arrived.
And I love it in the beginning, you're like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna call this South Bend," even though we know it wasn't called South Bend until, what, 18 something, but we're gonna instead of saying the land that would become South Bend.
That would get too facetious, so we call it South Bend, and I just make sure everyone knows that I know I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, well, we're here to talk about a pretty neat article that you had written about a year ago and about an even neater surprise find that was found. And we're here to talk about J.D. Oliver Jr. And the Oliver name in South Bend is a big name and everything. But before we dive into J.D. Oliver Jr. and the little story that we have, can you provide some background as to who J.D. Oliver Jr. was and how he kind of fit into the whole Oliver empire?
Yeah, so J.D. Oliver Jr. was the 3rd generation of the
Got
Oliver
it.
dynasty, and he was the heir apparent to his dad, J.D. Oliver, and he was the one who was supposed to be the new king of the Oliver Empire.
Okay.
And we'll get into it a little bit, but of course, as he is there is when the Oliver Empire starts to ultimately crumble.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of time and business and a changing world. And he has the misfortune to sort of be the one who has to preside over that.
Ah, okay. What kind of pressure do you think came with being an Oliver, especially a 3rd generation Oliver like him?
I think that the pressure probably came a little later, although there was certainly
Okay.
pressure his whole life to be excellent.
Yeah.
You know, he graduated first in his class.
Uh-huh.
He studied Latin. He did all of those things that
Mm,
well-bred, well-educated elites were supposed to do in those days because he had access to everything.
right.
So that's a different pressure than
True, true.
someone working an assembly line.
Uh-huh.
It's still pressure. It's a different pressure. He never wondered where food was coming from at the end of the
Correct.
day. He never worried that he wouldn't be able to afford the things that everyone else afforded. But he also was under a lot of pressure to be pretty perfect all the
Right.
time his whole life. He
Yep.
was under the microscope. I describe him as him and the Studebaker kids would have
Mhm.
been the princes of South Bend
That's a good way to describe it.
being bred to become kings.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, the princes of South Bend. So, the Oliver family was pretty important to the identity of South Bend at the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. He graduated from Central High School too, which is awesome. You know, I just reading that, it
Mhm.
was neat that just here he was, a more affluent kiddo, just went to Central High School, which was right there near his house.
Yeah, there wasn't another option for
No.
him.
Uh-uh.
They we'll get into this, but they were not Catholic. And so,
Mm.
Catholic education, which existed at that time, was not something he was gonna do,
Yeah.
and there wasn't a 3rd option. So he
Uh-huh.
went to the same high school as everyone else. But when you think about back in the day, if you were the CEO, the president of a company, a
Yeah.
Studebaker, an Oliver, a Bendix, whoever you are, if you were the main guy at a company, your kids went to school with your employees' kids. You went to church with your employees. You
Yeah.
were in a bowling league and you got beat by your employees who are better bowlers than you or golfers than you or whatever the thing was. You rubbed shoulders with the people you worked with.
Mhm.
And then over the course of time, we have moved those C-suites to New York, to Chicago, to
Yeah.
big cities. So
Mhm.
when someone in New York decides this company has to do mass layoffs because we have to protect the shareholders' interests,
Right.
they never have to then go to church the next day
Mhm.
with the people they laid off.
Yeah.
They never have to send their kids to school the next day with the kids of the
Yeah.
people they had to lay off. And so there's this weird social responsibility that comes when you know the people
Yeah.
directly whose lives you affect. And then as businesses conglomerate, we lose that a little bit.
Way lost.
Mm.
And that's a great point, especially and this is case in point back in the day with like the Olivers and living right there, going to school right there, church right there, the factory was right there. Probably didn't go a day without seeing one of their workers.
Yeah, absolutely. They would have driven a nicer carriage and then a
Yeah.
nicer car. They certainly lived in a nicer house. We know that. But they didn't get to be apart from them whenever they
True.
wanted to. When they went to the
Truth.
store, when they went to the theater, when
Mhm.
they went bowling, when they went to the golf course, everyone was there
Yeah.
and everyone knew who they were
Uh-huh.
because
That's
they were
true.
famous. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Hell, at that time, they paid for the whole cities, man.
Mhm.
I mean, my gosh.
Yeah, the Olivers had a hotel, they had
Mhm.
helped pay for the first town hall, and so they were not just building an empire, they were
Yeah.
building parts of the city too, and everyone knew that,
Mhm.
and that's what J.D. Oliver Jr. was kind of the heir to, not
Right.
just the family business, but the responsibility to the people of the city.
And now, a brief word from one of our sponsors. Your business relies on technology, but technology needs protection. Our managed IT and cybersecurity services act like your own in-house security team, monitoring and defending your systems 24/7. We just don't fix problems, we prevent them. Local service, real experts, real security. Call MT Box Computers today at 574-277-2775 or head to their website to learn more, www.mtboxcomputers.com. A link to the website is in this episode's show notes. Thank you, MT Box Computers, for all of your support of our content. I'm so very appreciative and glad to spread the good word about your work. And now, back to the episode. Then, J.D. Oliver in 1917, he was 25 years old. He married Eleanor McMillan, who came from an affluent family as well, and they seemed like the perfect match. But a series of events occurred that altered things drastically. Where did he have to go soon after he got married?
So they were a very good match, and she was the daughter of, like, a Tennessee politician, so
Yeah.
this was a real power
Uh-huh.
couple. I don't know if, like, the marriage was a arranged the way we think of marriage as being arranged. Feels like it might have been,
Mhm.
but they were absolutely a power couple of their
Right.
day, and then he gets called off to serve in the First World War.
Mm.
So, that was the thing that happened. He reports to training camp
Yep.
to go through the motions to
Right.
become someone who will fight in a war,
Mhm.
and before he can finish his training and get deployed, the war ends.
Mhm.
So he never ends up going off to serve. He's honorably discharged after having done his time,
Got it.
and he's getting ready to come home to South Bend
Mhm.
when his wife has a terrible, terrible accident on a horse.
Mm. So she had a terrible accident on a horse literally a few days before he got back, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometime between the time that he learned he was
Yeah.
going to be going home and they actually said, "You can go home now,"
Mm.
is when she has this accident. So he is so
Mm.
close to being able to come home and be
Oh,
reunited with his young wife, and
yeah.
she has a horrible accident on a horse. Doesn't kill her right away.
Uh-huh.
She's paralyzed, she's in bad shape, she hangs on for about a year,
Right.
and then eventually succumbs to the injuries that the
Goodness.
doctor said she was never going to fully recover from,
Right.
and she didn't. And so J.D. Oliver Jr. has just lost his young wife. He's come back from a war he never fought in. His wife is gone. He has a company, so
Right.
he kind of pours himself into his work for a while, but soon enough, that's going to go away too
Yeah.
because the Oliver Corporation is going to dissolve and be parted out, and he's no longer going to be
The
doing
man.
yeah, he's no longer doing the day-to-day of the work. Now, he's still sitting on a gorgeous mansion and a pile of family money, but everything that he had spent his life
Mhm.
building toward, the purpose, what he was gonna do with it. He was gonna be married, he was gonna have a family,
Right.
he was gonna have a great job. Those things are all gone now.
And you wrote that for decades at it was kind of that moment-ish that was when people started describing his life as tragic, right? Is that kinda when that notion started?
Yeah, so the common story says the light went out in his life.
Okay.
He poured himself into his work, that was gone, and what you will hear people say, and it's still repeated, is
Uh-huh.
that he went back into Copshaholm, went up
Okay.
to his 3rd floor bedroom, and then didn't come out. Just
A
stayed
hermit.
there for decades,
Yeah.
mostly like a hermit, yeah.
Uh-huh. When you say, those rumors and stuff like that, so it's almost like common knowledge as far as, like, that is just what it was, right? He was just a hermit? Is that
Yeah, I would say that most people think of that as common knowledge, and there's
Yeah.
there's lots of pieces that sort of check. I mean, never remarried.
Truth.
So you see that he never took another meaningful job again.
Okay.
He was involved with the family's finances and managing
Mhm.
those a little bit, but it's not like he poured himself into another industry or
Right.
another he didn't become the president or the general manager of another
Right.
company. He never remarries. So everything kind of points toward this guy just kind of shut it down.
Uh-huh.
But as we're going to find out, there is more to that story as there usually is.
That is neat. In a time before, cell phones and a time before pictures and everywhere, like, people had their perceptions, and their perception was that he's just a kind of a lonely dude doing his own thing, wealthy beyond all get out, but he's just kinda by himself. Enter a briefcase. How did you first hear that someone had found J.D. Oliver Jr.'s briefcase?
I was teaching a class at Forever Learning Institute.
Okay.
Shout out Forever Learning Institute. Great establishment, great place to learn anything you want, including local history. And after I taught a class there, a woman came up to me and asked me if I knew any of the secret life of J.D. Oliver Jr. And
Uh-huh.
I looked at her for a long time because I didn't know what she was talking
Uh-huh.
about. But we talked for a while. She introduced herself. Her name was Carolyn. We hit it off, and we agreed to meet,
Okay.
and that she would show me what she had.
And at that point, at the Forever Learning Institute, did she say what she had? Do you remember,
She
or is it
hinted that
okay,
she had
hinted.
some of his old stuff.
Okay,
Yeah,
but you at that point, you didn't know it was gonna be, like, a briefcase,
I
and
did not.
oh my gosh, what was going through your mind, as you were talking to her?
Well, Matt, I'm going to tell you the truth about what was going through my
Tell me
mind.
the truth.
The truth, and you know this, is a lot of skepticism in the
Yep,
back of my head.
okay,
A lot of people have stories or conspiracies or
yeah,
whatever, and I listen to it, but you can't run with it. You have
nope,
to verify. That's what you do when you're telling history. And so every time someone comes up to me, I'm super interested. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I hope this checks out.
right,
And so she says she's got this evidence of this life that is not reported on.
uh-huh,
I'm intrigued, obviously,
absolutely,
but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I hope this checks out.
right,
So we met a few weeks later at the Francis Branch Library, and I am
wow,
happy to report that it checked out completely.
so you had written in your article that you were there a little bit early, you were
Yes.
pretty excited about it, and you saw her walk in, and she had an old briefcase, right?
She had an old tan briefcase.
Uh-huh,
There's a picture of it in the article, and I'm
yep,
sure you can add it to the show notes.
mhm,
And it's an old briefcase. It's not terribly fancy, but it is stamped
okay,
JDO Jr.
okay,
It's it's his
yes.
it's his briefcase. And so I am looking at this thing like I am Indiana Jones.
Yeah, in The Last Crusade.
I've just
Indiana,
discovered
Indiana,
treasure, or yeah,
the
National
Holy
Treasure.
Grail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm Nick Cage in National Treasure. This is a treasure. That's what this is.
Yes, yes.
And you know this as someone who chases down history
Uh-huh.
stories. Like, these moments are few and far between when you
Mhm.
realize there is a gold mine of information there that it's obviously existed. She didn't just conjure it, but it's not in the public sphere.
Correct.
You're the first person to see this in a long
That's
time,
so neat.
and you're about to discover something.
So cool.
It could have been an actual treasure chest. I wouldn't have been more excited.
So, w with all that excitement going into it, you open this thing up. What kinda items were inside of it?
So, in the briefcase, the first layer is mostly pictures of J.D. Oliver Jr. with his horses,
Okay.
riding his horses, looking at his horses, petting his horses. The guy loved his horses,
He's a horse guy.
which is actually pretty incredible when you remember that his first wife
Yes.
died in a horse accident. Like, you could see him pushing that part of his life aside, but
Good point.
he kept horses, rode horses, so that's in there.
Uh-huh.
That's kinda neat, but we push those away, and then it gets real exciting
Mhm.
because what comes next is dozens, maybe hundreds of love letters that
Mm.
he wrote to his longtime partner
Yeah.
throughout his life. And
Uh-huh.
when I say hundreds, I mean it. There's hundreds of letters in
Wow.
there of this 40-year relationship.
That is 40 years. That is amazing. The briefcase revealed that what JD, like you just said, had a decades-long relationship with Lorene Malee? How would you pronounce.
Lorene Malaya.
Okay, Lorene Malaya. Okay, okay. And you had wrote that they traveled together, they attended family gatherings together, they remained companions, like you said, for decades. So who was she? Who was Lorene Malaya?
So we don't know how they met.
Okay.
I don't know when the relationship started,
Uh-huh.
other than that we know when the love letters started.
When was that?
About 13 years after his first wife's death is
Okay.
when the first dated love letter is in this
Uh-huh.
thing, which would lead me to believe they'd been together for more than a day or two by then.
Truth.
If he's writing these sweet letters to her. We don't know how they met. We don't
Uh-huh.
know how they got connected in the first place. Um, and one thing that I was initially skeptical about, or one thing that I didn't wanna do, I didn't wanna air anyone's dirty laundry.
Truth. Yep.
If it was like they had this relationship, they want it to be a secret, and I know they're both long dead, I still didn't wanna be like, "Guess
Yeah.
what, guys?"
National Enquirer.
But, the more I got into it, the more I realized they were not being secretive about this.
Yeah.
They would go out sometimes and they traveled together, and they
Mhm.
traveled with some of his friends and
Okay.
associates. Um, and my friend Carolyn, who had the briefcase, remembered him from when she was a little girl, that
Yeah.
he would be at their family reunions.
Uh-huh.
Carolyn is Lorene's great niece,
Mhm.
and some of her cousins even remember calling him Uncle Joe.
I
And
love
so
that part. Just Uncle Joe.
immediately you realize this wasn't a secret.
Uh-huh.
This wasn't something they were trying to keep hush hush. It wasn't something they were trying to keep scandalous. They were just living their life and making the best of it, and enjoying each other's company and having some pretty wonderful adventures.
Mhm.
And it just didn't quite fit that neat story of
Him
guy
being
going
a
up and
hermit.
running away from the world. So maybe it's not as great a story, or as neat a story, or as much of a bow tied on a story, but the real story is
Right.
the one that I tell in the article, and that's always the most important thing, and I think it ends up being pretty sweet.
Yeah, it is, most definitely. I mean, and you could tell just from reading, obviously, you said he wrote a lot of them, but, for example, you wrote that JD was worrying that he and Lorene would never dance again. I mean, things like that just shows how much he truly cared for her.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the other cool thing about this briefcase, even if these weren't love letters, the, letters were all in envelopes sent from the most incredible list of hotels across Europe that you could ever imagine. And so Lorene did not go with him when he did his European
Okay.
travels. So this is when he's writing her letters from
Uh-huh.
Europe, because he'd be over there for 3, 4, 5 weeks. And we're talking London,
Yeah.
Paris, Vatican City,
Uh-huh.
Stockholm, Oslo. I mean, the fanciest places that you can imagine written on the fanciest hotel letterhead.
Yep.
And so Carolyn went through and organized all these into a spreadsheet so we can kinda
No
see.
way.
Yeah, we could see his travels, and he was in Turkey for 2 days, and then he went up to I mean, it was incredible just to see his travels
Yeah.
around the globe,
Yep.
multiple European expeditions that
Mhm.
lasted a few weeks,
Mhm.
over the course of these years.
Yeah, when I was reading that and when you had mentioned that in the article about how much he traveled, I was just amazed by it because it's not like as much today where you can just hop and fly over. I mean, it was sometimes it was in the 1930s, 40s, and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, it's also not hermit-like behavior.
No, not to say the least. Yeah, even if he didn't have a long-term relationship with Lorene and he was still traveling, that's not hermit type behavior.
Yeah, he's out there exploring the world. It's
Yeah.
terrific.
But it was neat in your article, Uncle Joe would just sit and watch Chicago Bears football.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Carolyn remembered. She's obviously much younger than he is, and
Yeah.
so she was small, and so when he was older, he had stopped traveling.
Uh-huh.
Life had been a little less active. What she remembers is him being at
Yep.
Lorraine's house, sitting on the easy chair, watching the Bears on TV.
And they said when he did come to the reunions and all that stuff, he was a normal dude, just dressed a little bit nicer than the rest.
Yeah, I met with Carolyn and her brother, that's what they both remembered. He
Yeah.
was a normal guy, he felt like part of the family. He was dressed a little bit better than everyone else, that's what they would say.
But still, it's neat that this dude, Joe, just Joe, that's J.D. Oliver Jr., who was an heir to the quite a important business in our city's history, and he's just sitting there watching the Chicago Bears.
Mhm, absolutely.
You wrapped up the article by challenging those years-long assumptions that he wasn't frozen in grief. He found companionship and happiness in Lorraine. Why do you think they never married?
There are a few reasons. I mentioned earlier the Olivers were not Catholic.
Okay.
Lorraine was Catholic.
Mhm.
She was very Catholic. In
Yeah.
fact, she was so Catholic that when they would do trips into Chicago, they would drive into Chicago for the weekend.
Okay.
She would take the train back early to make sure she got to mass on Sunday morning.
Yep. That's
So
what
a Catholic Protestant would certainly be one explanation
Uh-huh.
for it. The other explanation might be that she did not want to have to move into Copshaholm. She might not have wanted the pressure of being an Oliver.
Yeah.
That would certainly be understandable. They seemed to be pretty happy the
Mhm.
way things were. It seemed to be working for them,
Yeah.
and so they stayed the way that it was. When J.D. Oliver died, um, this is the first time, like, the official record ever mentions Lorraine, is because in his will, he provided some money to support her for the rest of her life, and the newspaper
Wow.
only describes her as a friend of the family, which immediately should have thrown up flags for anyone
Yeah.
reading a newspaper because that's a weird thing to do.
True.
Um, he cared about her. He wanted to make sure she was well cared for,
Yep.
so she lives for a while. When she dies, her obituary doesn't mention him at all.
Okay.
His official obituary didn't mention her at all, just the estate plan,
Yeah.
which only gets read if you are a mega, mega, mega millionaire. The paper's like, "We're gonna read this guy's will to you," and she's in it,
Uh-huh.
and then she kinda disappears.
Yeah.
He dies, she's in there, they're like family friend, and then she disappears from the record,
Uh-huh.
and the story gets told, "Yep, this is the house, he's the last one that lived here regularly,
Yeah.
and he just was in here by himself most of the time after the great sadness of his life." And he's dead. I don't know that he cares that I'm doing this story,
Yeah.
but I would like someone to
You're
know that,
darn right.
"Hey, I was not as
Yes.
miserable as everyone has been
Yes.
saying I am for the last 50 years."
Yes. And you mentioned that he did the only record is of the what he left her, like a quarterly stipend or whatever. You'd written that it was $2,500 a quarter in 1972 when he passed. That's $20,000 today.
Mhm.
That is a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. Now it's not much more than a drop in his fortune.
But correct, but for
Mhm.
her.
Yeah, it's a good sum for her to live comfortably, not extravagantly.
Right.
It didn't make her a queen of South Bend by any
No.
means,
No.
and no one can look at that and say that she took
Right.
anyone's inheritance because it really was
Yep.
such a small portion, but it's notable that
Yes. Quite notable.
that is not something that you do for someone who
Right.
is just a family friend.
Mhm.
That's an important long-term relationship, and you wanna make sure this
Yeah.
person's cared for.
Yeah, this is just such a neat story. Uh, your article is about how one discovery can completely reshape our understanding of another person's life. Man, what do you think's an important lesson to learn from that?
So the boring, historian lesson is always look for a primary source.
Mhm.
That's always the boring historian lesson.
Yep.
If you hear a story repeated by someone else, if you hear a story repeated by someone else that got written down and then repeated by someone else again, you're always looking for the primary source.
Yeah.
And we should always be skeptical.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean we should go around being conspiratorial and
Got it.
assuming that everything is a conspiracy and everyone's lying to
Yeah.
us. There's no harm in looking for a primary source.
Uh-huh.
And my experience has always been that when I find that primary source, it may confirm the original story, but it makes it richer.
Yes.
And sometimes it tells
Yes.
you the original story was a little different than what you've heard.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Wild. You gotta wonder how many of these stories are sitting in attics, basements out there, you know?
I wonder about it all the time. That's why I do what I
do. All right. Well, hey, Aaron, thank you a lot for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Matt.
All right, man. Thank you for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. An extra special thanks to Aaron Hellman for joining and sharing your knowledge and passion for our local history. Join us again next time as we learn more about the story behind South Bend and Mishawaka.